and basically rock concert event. I will give credit where credit is due. I thought the athletic department, Zach Selman, and many others that were on the ground working their tails off to put that event on. And they brought back a bunch of former players and dignitaries and so on, and they announced Brian O'Connor, Oak, but we've got another nickname that we're going to use because, well, we're different, and we're creative and so on, and the listeners are going to figure out which one out of the ones that we threw out last week. But it was a hell of a night, and then a lot of stuff has happened since then for Brian O'Connor and this Mississippi State baseball team. One thing, even Steve usually knows before everybody else, but even when I walked in and saw him Thursday night at the press conference, he said, I did not know that Brian O'Connor was going to get paid $2.93 million plus incentives per year. And so we welcome in GenesPage.com, 247 Sports owner, the Boneyard Podcast. Steve Robertson joins us on the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line, brought to you by the amazing Ruben at Older Brother Bistro, and we'll go with the wings and street tacos at Two Brothers in Starkville. Steve Robertson, were you surprised, shocked? What was your initial reaction when you saw that Brian O'Connor was making $3 million a year?
Well, I'd say impressed. You know, when I go back to the infancy of the search, and I had been kind of given some assurances from some people in Lee Hall that Dr. Mark Keenum and Zach Selman were ready to kind of open the purse strings and pay a top five salary and could be, around $2 million. And then you walk in there and you get handed a piece of paper and it's nearly $3 million, which makes Brian O'Connor the second highest paid college baseball coach in America. And like, I'm not a guy that's just caught up on price tags, but I think it's one of those deals where it really illustrates the financial commitment that this university is willing to make to bring national championships back to Starkville. And we've had a taste of that. We felt like for years it was kind of a manifest destiny. We finally broke through, but now that we've got one, we want 20.
Okay, and let's talk. I got some information. You already know this. He brought about 10 staffers with him. They're like this close-knit family. Everybody knows their role. There's so many times in different programs on college campuses, as you know, Steve, people are running around like, chickens with their head cut off. And people don't have clearly defined roles, like Nick Saban had clearly defined roles. And evidently Brian O'Connor does. Talk about this family, these 10 staffers that have all moved, and you saw them too on Thursday. They're all excited to be in Starkville on top of that.
I had somebody kind of equate it to when Leach came in with all of his offensive guys, like everybody understood their role and what needed to be done. And I heard a lot of, instead of, hey, what do we do about this? It's like, hey, where is this? We need this, And so, as you mentioned, they've got boots on the ground. They've already got a system in place. I mean, they're bringing just about the full staff in its entirety from Virginia to Mississippi State. And some of those people are basically lifelong Virginia people, And so it's interesting to see, I guess, the allegiance that these staffers have with Brian O'Connor. I've done some research. I'm hoping to get a column together later this week about kind of what made Brian O'Connor who he was. But, when he was a junior in high school at St. Albert High School, he was on a state championship basketball team and scored 8 points in the final against Pella to win a state championship. They finished the year 27-0.
Damn.
And then he took the mound that year after it was an all-state selection as a junior with a 10-1 record as a pitcher, and he hit 360. And so. This is a guy, that has achieved at the highest levels wherever he has been. We talk about, the winners win, right? And you look, there has just been really a legacy of winning throughout Brian O'Connor's life. And there are some people, Bo, that just have this magnetism about them that people are drawn to them and say, you know what, I'm going to hitch my wagon to him because I know he's going to win. And you kind of get that level of esprit de corps that we're seeing now with these Virginia staffers coming into Mississippi State to be part of the Brian O'Connor experience.
Brian O'Connor, new head baseball coach at Mississippi State, was introduced. They did a really cool night. It wasn't even a press conference. It was a party. And I walked around people were cooking, having fun. They had Bobby Thigpen, all these people back. Steve and I remember Thigpen on the, 83, 84, 85 teams, went on to pitch for the White Sox, among other teams. One year, I think he dropped 57 saves. Anyway, the point is, it was a big ordeal. And Brian O'Connor has brought double-digit people with him, and they all know what they want to do, what Brian wants. It's worked, and there's something to this. So Steve Robertson joins us on the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line. I'm going to go Justin Parker before I go Ace Reese. Why did it end up being Justin Parker?
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, it was on Tuesday. I had somebody reach out to me, and I did my best to kind of get some confirmation within the Bryan building. And people are a little bit coy. That's kind of how it works, when
Sure.
some new coaches. But basically, I truly believe that Zach Selman let Brian O'Connor reach this decision on his own. As you know, Justin Parker's very impressive, but. I was told during this process that Zach Selman said, hey, we have a pitching coach here. We're not going to force him on you, but we'd like for you to consider him. And I think that's really all Justin Parker needs as an opportunity to sell himself. And, Tuesday I was told, hey, this whole thing with Moose is maybe not the way that it's been portrayed to be by some, but Brian's still working through this process. But I believe that he's going to stick with Parker. He's been impressed with Parker and his evaluation. They kind of see pitching the same way. And there's the continuity of the roster. And I had, some people tell me if Parker left, then, Ryan McPherson and Charlie Foster may be in the portal, but if he was retained, there's a good chance that they would be back. And those guys are future weekend starters, And so I think it's a combination of all those things. I think it's seeing life in baseball the same way. And then the fact, too, that you probably need a transition guy in some respects, but also, too, Justin Parker's a really good pitching coach.
Sure. Yeah, well, and there's a 20-year – I think this is actually good. Even though O'Connor is young and in great shape, 54 years old, but, Justin being 34, 35, 20-year age gap, they can both learn from each other, Steve.
Well, I don't think there's any question. And I think Justin Parker is going to be a head coach somewhere. He had a lot of people here because sometimes at Mississippi State, people look for the easier, softer way. And
no doubt.
Just promote, but Justin Parker is going to be a head baseball coach at some point at the major college level. And I think it's of great interest to watch how Brian O'Connor maybe will help shape his path a little bit for him. The fact that you're aligned with a Hall of Fame coach, a guy that's won a national championship, and then the guy that brought you here was a national championship guy too, and so you begin to think about the pedigree that Parker is beginning to kind of establish here as an assistant coach. I think it really sets him up well, but I think O'Connor's a guy too that you're talking to some people around that program, they say that he is not this ranter and raver. Now, he will get after you when he needs to, but he's a guy that's really big on relationships and kind of keeping people even keeled, but I don't know that he ever goes Augie Garrido on anybody, but I've been told that he is a guy that'll hold people accountable, and that there's a lot of people. It's not that he drives them, but it's like they're just so worried about disappointing them because he pours so much into people. That's a pretty good attribute to have.
Yeah, it is. Steve Robertson talking Brian O'Connor on the Out of Bounds show. Justin Parker is back as the pitching coach. Steve just laid that out. He also did on genespage.com. And we don't have time to go over all the players that are back. Steve obviously knew well before any of us, but Ace Reese, the All-American third baseman, who is projected to be a top 10 pick next year in the MLB draft and just had a phenomenal year for MSU, made his announcement official on Friday night that he was coming back. Steve, when did you know Ace was coming back?
Well, I knew for sure when Ace said he was coming back, but we were optimistic kind of leading up to that. But listen, there's a lot of things that happen on social media and that sort of stuff. I want to make sure that people fully understand that this was not a foregone conclusion, and our people behind the scenes had to work very diligently to ensure that a deal was in place. Now, the flip side of that is Ace Reese was not going to hold Mississippi State hostage. That's just not who he is. That's not who his family is. They were eager to get a deal done. They wanted to make sure that it was fair and equitable. And so it's done. But, yeah, I was always optimistic that he would be back. But, you know, you hear things out there. You hear LSU, Tennessee, schools like that are lurking. To ignore that would be irresponsible. But, no, it was far from a foregone conclusion. It was a relief to wake up and see that he had made that announcement, that he was.
Yeah, talk about how big that. I mean, this guy's unbelievably talented. You put him in the, at the 3 spot, whatever, and you can build all around him. I mean, how big a deal is that for BOC and the staff?
Well, I think it's huge, but also too in the portal, it really helps you, right? Because now you've got, hey, this is the nucleus that's coming back, and hey, the face of our program is going to be back too, so, hey, he's going to hit 3-hole. We can put you around him. I think it becomes a bit of a drawing card. I mean, you add these players that he's added already. And of course, Florida's 5 from Virginia. Those are guys that he knows well. He knows how to sell them. But when you think about, Bryce Chance coming back and, Bryce is not a star, but Bryce is a very important cog in the Mississippi
State
team and one of the better leaders on the team and a guy that wants to be a Bulldog, and you got to have some people like that in your clubhouse. Had the best year of his career this year, and Bryce is back. Okay. And I want to make sure I clarify that too. A lot of people think, well, they're just saying this to have leverage with the draft. Guys, Bryce Chance is going to be back at Mississippi State next year. And that needs to be understood.
Dude's a hitting machine.
Not because he has to be. Bryce Chance wants to be back at Mississippi State next year, and he will be. And that's, you start thinking about that. Maybe you slide him back to left, which is more of his natural position, which I thought he played really well this year at center field. Probably exceeded my expectations. But when you start thinking about the core you're bringing back and what you're adding to it, this roster could really do some damage next year.
Steve Robertson, genespage.com. He's been following all of it throughout the process. Brian O'Connor's the new head coach, $3 million a year, bringing 10 staffers with him. They're this cohesive family unit, clearly defined roles. And then they retained a bunch of guys over the weekend and brought in a bunch of dudes too from Virginia and Illinois and so on. Let's talk. You just mentioned him earlier, but I want to go back because this guy's got a chance to pitch on Friday or Saturday. Jay Powell just went on and on about Ryan McPherson last week, Steve. Justin Parker and Brian O'Connor are able to get him in the boat early. What does that mean for the team and the staff?
Well, that's huge. And hey, if anybody knows the importance of changing planes and the right-handed breaking ball, it's Jay Powell, right? I mean, I always enjoy talking with Jay because I learned something. It's kind of, in some ways, it's kind of like talking with Ben McDonald, and so when Jay is excited about stuff, I'm really excited about it because I think his stamp of approval means a lot. But Ryan McPherson has some toughness in him that I don't know that a lot of people have seen. I mean, just like him coming back and getting the save against Ole Miss after blowing the save opportunity, out there at Trustmark in the Governor's game. McPherson has got some grit to him. And, listen, I thought the way that he pitched against Florida State, even though the things didn't go the way we wanted to, I think it showed really who he is. I mean, this guy's a competitor. And, the stuff's only going to get better. He's going to get bigger and stronger. But I think that's kind of the reality of this thing is when you start thinking about not only is it good for this year's rotation, for Foster and McPherson, those guys to be there, it kind of sets you up well. And O'Connor said something that was music to my ears in that post-ceremony press conference when he goes, we're going to build this program on high school players. We're going to build this on development. We're going to use the portal to supplement. I get there's a lot of people out there that are kind of reliant on the portal. But, the program that's been the most consistent in the Southeastern Conference for maybe the last decade is Arkansas, right?
Yeah.
And headed to Omaha again. Dave Van Horn will tell you, yes, we're going to use the portal, but we're not going to sell out for the portal. We're going to go out and recruit the highest level players we can. We're going to develop them and have a strong nucleus that will sustain us year after year. O'Connor's kind of adopted that same model. And you look at Virginia, did they use the portal some? Yes. But they weren't out there signing a dozen players every year. And there's some people that are treating SEC baseball like it's a junior college deal where you just got to go spend millions of dollars every year and put another roster together. With this new program, this new settlement things coming in, I don't know how easy that's going to be able to do anymore. Because with this clearinghouse now, that has to approve your NIL deals. You're not going to be able to go pay over market value. Like we had a situation last year. I won't say the name of the school, but we had a situation last year. Mississippi State, I think it was $150,000, and a young man was ready to agree, and then somebody else came in and paid him $300,000. And nobody else in the industry was anywhere close to that. But when you get desperate and you get towards the end of it, you're like, hey, just go spend the money and get that guy done. I don't think those deals are going to be approved anymore through the clearinghouse. And so it's going to be very, very interesting to see this as this ever-evolving compensation model looks, what's going to happen with that. And I think teams that have sold out for the portal may have a difficult time kind of adjusting back to this high school development piece.
Yeah.
And I think O'Connor already sees it that way.
Yeah, that was a good answer. That was even after the big event. He spent an hour or whatever with Steve and them, or 30, 45 minutes, and I watched the whole thing, and he talked about he was going to build the program on high school kids and supplementing on the transfer portal. So they how many was it over the weekend? Virginia and Illinois and all that portal guys?
Yeah, my head is swimming right now, but it's 5 right now.
Okay.
I'm trying to remember all these guys in my head right now, but
no,
yeah,
my next question was, how many more do you think? All right, so let's say they're at 5, the Virginia and Illinois dudes. How many more do you, give or take, how many more do you think they'll add?
Well, you got to get a shortstop, right? I mean, you have to get a shortstop, and you think, Sawyer Reeves has exhausted his eligibility, and Dylan Cupp's in the portal, and Buckner's in the portal. A lot of people feel really good about, Becker and what he's going to do. And so, he just got back from Texas, and, we'll see. But you got to get a shortstop, and you got to get some more pitching depth. There's not any question. And catching. I mean, you don't have a single catcher on the roster right now outside of a high school signee who hadn't enrolled yet. And so those are some glaring things. And, maybe an outfielder or two. I think you need to get a starter, and I think you've probably got to get some depth. Reed Stallman coming back is big, but, I think this year may be kind of a larger portal class than O'Connor ordinarily signs, because he's bringing some of his guys with him.
Sure.
And the fact that, there's been some guys, and let's just kind of call it for what it is, Bo. I mean, we can't be honest on the Out of Bounds show, we're going to be honest, but, we've had some guys that have been here that are, really not Mississippi State talent. I mean,
No.
It hadn't developed, and that's okay. We wish them the best and appreciate their contributions, and that's not all those guys. But there've been some guys that have been signed that are never going to get to the Mississippi State level, and that's kind of what O'Connor's dealing with right now. It's like, who can help me win next year and beyond, and who can't?
Right.
And that's a difficult decision to make, and I think that's where you lean on Parker a lot. But in addition to that, it'll be a bigger portal class, but I think by and large what you're going to see is Brian O'Connor build his roster basically the same way he did at Virginia. And then when a guy doesn't develop, or there's an injury, or a guy goes pro, then you go supplement from the portal.
Okay. All right. Steve Robertson, genespage.com on the Out of Bounds show. So were you surprised, Stallman, that look, he had some good numbers. He didn't play every day like you just referenced. And they know more about upside, runway, potential. Were you surprised that they wanted him back so bad?
No. He's a big left-handed bat, and he's got to cut down on the strikeouts a little bit. Sometimes he has kind of a long loop and swing, and when he gets out of things mechanically, he's the guy that can have that big strikeout. But lefty hadn't been the best situation for him. Of course, we go to Missouri, and everybody get those guys, but to have a big bat like him, even if you bring him off the bench, or even if he serves as a left-handed pinch hitter, you need a piece like that. You need a guy that can turn the ball around 100 miles an hour from time to time. So I don't know where he plays. Maybe he plays at first. That's his natural position. We kind of tried to make him an outfielder last year, and he did the best he could. Some days it was okay, and other days it wasn't. But that's a big offensive piece for you. You think about all the jacks he hit this year and only played about half the time.
Damn. All right. Isn't it wild what happened the last few weeks, Steve, to this program? Just with, Lamona's getting let go, Parker and Gotro getting this thing going and punching their ticket to the postseason, and Selman, Keenum, and alums are going to spend well over $10 million when you look at salaries and NIL in year one.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. And I think a lot of people would say, finally, right? I mean, it's like, we have Mississippi State, and listen, I grew up in this as you, so I feel like I can say this without consequence. But, sometimes I just ask myself, are we gonna call ourselves the best, or are we gonna be the best?
Amen.
Okay, I would rather be the second. There's a lot of people that say, hey, look at all these attendance records, and I wrote about this yesterday. Listen, I'm super proud of all that stuff, but I would rather have a string of national championships displayed in the Duty Noble concourse than attendance records. The attendance records are great. It shows the passion for the sport, for this university and this program. But we need something a little more substantial to brag about. And I think we're entering an era that maybe perhaps that you and I kind of dreamed of as young boys growing up in small town Mississippi.
Yeah. Did I miss anybody? We've got 2 minutes here. Anything else pertinent, like headline worthy in the baseball program and BOC and players? Did I miss anybody, Steve?
Well, really, I think when you kind of work through all this and you think about how they've done this too, I think it's been pretty smart too. Rather than have like a mass announcement of all the guys that are coming out, I think You've had a little bit of blurb of good news every day. So it's somebody behind the scenes at Mississippi State baseball is kind of paying attention. It's like, hey, let's just kind of build this to a crescendo. We had the ceremony, and then next thing you know, Ace has announced he's coming back, and so this is a baseball fan base that's had this up and down roller coaster experience, and I think we're building some momentum out there, and I think they're capitalizing on that by using the proper marketing. I think you may even get some more good news today. And so I think that's an important aspect of things too, is that now people are like, even my wife comes home last night. She loves college baseball. We watched LSU and West Virginia together last night, and she goes, I'm just ready for us to start playing again. And she said, every time I turn around, like I get on Facebook and there's something new and positive, she said, everybody is so jacked about Mississippi State baseball. And that's what you wanted. That's why you make the change, right? You make the change to infuse enthusiasm into your fan base, into your program. And Mississippi State's been very successful doing that.
I give Selman and Keenum credit. I thought one of the funny quotes was O'Connor talking about Selman speed dating. I thought that was great. Zach had a sense of urgency. He did what needed to be done. And they brought home the big fish, a top 3 coach in college baseball. Steve, great job on genespage.com. Appreciate it.
Thanks, buddy.
I think he just teased something, so you'll want to be on the site. Evidently, something's going to break over the next few hours on another player. We're live in the Bank Plus studio. The Out of Bounds Show is brought to you by Rick's Pro Truck. 3 locations in the metro area for your Jeep, your truck, or your SUV. RicksProTruck.com. Trucks live here. This is 105.9 The Zone, ESPN. Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann on NIL at 9:30.
Say, kids, what time is it?
It's 9 a.m. and this ain't okay show. It's the Out of Bounds Show with Bo Bounds.
On aboard!
As Mississippi's #1 morning show rolls on the Zone 105.9 and online at thezone1059.com.
Good morning. Welcome into the Out of Bounds Show, ESPN 105.9 The Zone.
It is not super hard to get to Omaha.
What?
I would say getting to Omaha is it's equivalent maybe to a Sweet 16 in basketball, maybe shotgun fight, maybe a round of 32.
Like I said, we are the Out of Bounds Show. I'm your host, Bo Bounds. 105.9 The Zone, ESPN.
I'm good, Bo Bounds.
And the show is brought to you by Make-A-Wish Mississippi. You know, they did an awesome partnership with Hunter Hines and Stone Simmons, raised a ton of money this baseball season. It was called Make-A-Wish Mississippi. They partnered with Simmons Erosion Control and Home Runs for Wishes. Hunter Hines had a phenomenal year. Stone Simmons is an incredible story of perseverance and a super young man. And, they raised, I saw it on Facebook. I'll have to text Allison in the break. But that they raised a bunch of money, Make-A-Wish, and it's, they restore hope with life-changing wishes for kids. They posted one little person who went to Disney World. They posted that yesterday, the day before, which was awesome because I shared it on Facebook. But ways that you can get involved with Make-A-Wish Mississippi, it's $6,500 for a kid to get a wish. And they get to go to a World Series game in Major League Baseball or, fly fishing out in Montana or Disney World or an NFL game or any number of things, and everything's taken care of. What you find is companies and businesses with 50, 70, 100, 200 employees, they like to do something like, every year they say we want to do this. Well, the business says we'll do X, and then the employees match, and you're at $6,500 and you have a wish for a Mississippi kid. All the money stays in state for Make-A-Wish Mississippi. It's all for wishes for kids. To transform, their lives with an amazing wish where they go to Disney World or a World Series game or an NFL game or any number of things, or they go shopping. They go on this.
They get cars sometimes.
Yeah, amazing shopping sprees.
Yeah.
But more kids are waiting for wishes than ever before, and you can change their lives by getting involved with Make-A-Wish Mississippi. And we're excited to be partnered with them, and it's been a ton of fun. We're going to do more with them.
Awesome.
And so get involved and go to wish.org/ms, wish.org/ms, and get involved today with a donation of $20, or if it's your company, go ahead and make it a full wish at $6,500. And it's a life-changing wish for a kid. I'm looking at some pictures here.
Dope.
I see kids traveling pretty much all over the country and all over the world, just depending on what they pick that they want to do. And then I see a shopping spree here too, which is awesome.
What would Bo Bounds have made his wish back in the day?
That's a long 10 years old.
That's a topic right there.
Where would I 10 years old.
I mean,
I guess Disney World, we went as a kid.
That wouldn't have been your wish. No way.
I don't know. I don't know at 10. I still love it. So
I love
people who listen to the show know that there are a lot of people who don't like the Disney World experience.
Right.
We caught the bug and went a million times with the kids. But we do it you have to know how to do it. Some people go down there, they take their kids, they're way too young, and they're miserable.
Yeah.
You got to know how to do it, know where to stay, and there's plenty of adult. Well, first of all, I think it's fun to do what 10-year-olds like. I mean, all the rides and all the different things.
Yeah.
Okay, but then there's plenty of other things to do. What would I was pretty eaten up with Major League Baseball as a kid.
Right, same.
So a World Series game would have been incredible at 10 years old.
Yeah.
Especially if Ricky Henderson was in it or the Cubs. They weren't, but, years later. That would have been pretty amazing. I was pretty eaten up. Look, man, the NBA.
Oh, man.
That was the time when Alex English, Adrian Dantley, Bernard King, Moses Malone, if you'd have told me I could have gone to the 1980, I think it was 82, Philadelphia 76ers, Dr. J, was several years removed from the ABA, but I remember those cool red, white, and blue balls that they used. But Moses, Dr. J, so on, that would have been cool. Super Bowls were still cool. It's nothing like today, but the NFL was growing, but it was just hitting its stride.
I can't see you picking that.
And then, it's not like I got up thinking I wanted to go to Europe.
No.
At 10, I wasn't going to drink some kind of amazing burgundy and eat, 5-star dinner.
But
Trying to think what else. Yeah, I think it had been sports driven. Major League Baseball, World Series.
I think it's a World Series for you.
NBA. Of course, Bird and Magic were getting going, right?
I think it's still World Series.
NFL, I wasn't I liked it.
Well,
but I was more, you have to understand, when I was a kid, today I just love the NFL.
Same.
As a kid, I was more MLB, NBA.
It's because what you're playing at the time, too, though. Like, that's what
No
you're
doubt.
involved with. You're not
I played some football, but I was, so Major League Baseball had not quite lost its hold on being America's game.
Right. When did that happen?
Right when I'm describing.
Okay.
Right in the early to mid 80s.
Pass the torch to the NFL.
Okay. Well, and then Jordan got going in the late 80s, but it still wasn't going to be the NFL, but Jordan owned the 90s with the six championships. So, yeah. But Disney World, now you also have to understand that Disney World in 83, whenever we went, I don't remember, it was still Walt Disney's brilliant, right? His vision, what he did, what he had to do, almost going broke a million times, getting it up and running in California and Florida is simply remarkable. But it was a rustic we went the first year Epcot was getting built, and it just didn't have the sizzle.
No.
Today,
that whole place sizzles.
The whole thing sizzles.
It's a sizzle.
Yeah, and you got other things going on even outside of what we were just talking about.
Right.
They have world-class restaurants, world-class places to stay.
Yeah, I think people forget about that.
All that. So
I got a group of buddies they were SAEs at State. They've been doing it ever since. They literally go every summer.
Do they really?
They go every summer. And they take the most touristy pictures on purpose. It's awesome.
Yeah.
It's great.
You just gave me an idea.
What you got?
Our guys' trip,
Dude.
I go on every year. We should go to Disney World.
Absolutely should go to Disney
Why
World.
haven't we done
I don't
that?
know, but you're missing out. Why? Because if you wanted to go to the beach a day or two, you could still hop over there.
And now that I don't want to go in June and July, okay?
No.
Or August. But now that we've moved our guys' trip to October,
oh man,
which is freaking perfect. By the way, they have a wine festival in October that Wendy tells me we're going to at some
Disney?
point. Yeah, they have it in Epcot.
Well, that's
there's already wonderful places to drink wine in Epcot because there's X amount of countries, especially in France and Spain and Italy. But I may have to.
That's a move, man.
It's the 20th year.
Uh-oh. That's a good.
I think we need to go to Disney World.
I beg you. But if you go, you gotta take the tourist pics.
Oh yeah, we gotta be cheesy. Yeah. We'll have somebody in the group that will get like a Mickey Mouse shirt.
Yeah,
it won't be me, but someone will. Anyway, visit Make-A-Wish Mississippi's site right now and get involved. Wish.org/MS. Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann in 20 minutes. Oh, good morning. Welcome in. Lunch today brought to you by Martin's in Livingston and Martin's downtown. I mean, I'm cool, whichever one you go to. Hit us up. We'll meet you there. Blue plates, po' boys, wings, nachos, local, Martin's in Livingston, where 463 and 22 meet. Martin's in Livingston. Open for lunch and dinner. Martin's Market is open, and they have fresh milk and cold beer and grab-and-go breakfast biscuits, which we've talked about. Man, we have some unbelievable – you know what? I was thinking about it. I don't know how this lined up. It's kind of funny. We have some awesome partners that have amazing breakfast biscuits. Fresh, hot, to go. I'll give you three. Martin's in Livingston. Martin's Market has fresh breakfast biscuits every morning. And of course they've got gas and, steaks and milk and Wicker's marinade and Jonesy Q rub and all that. So Martin's Market in Livingston has breakfast biscuits to go, grab and go. Dancing Rabbit Golf Club has some of the most amazing breakfast sandwiches, too. And they roll them out every morning for golfers, which is really cool. And they're fabulous. I like the egg bacon biscuit. I'll do cheese, but I'd rather just scrambled eggs and bacon. Fantastic. And then Fleetway Market and the Market Cafe has grab and go breakfast biscuits too. So we have three partners that have grab and go breakfast biscuits and breakfast sandwiches. Dancing Rabbit Golf Club, Martin's in Livingston, and Fleetway Market and the Market Cafe in Gluckstadt. And then, of course, B3 has the famous honey buttered chicken biscuit. They're not grab and go there, but they're still good. But the grab and go, man, we figured that out. And we just kind of did it. Just kind of happened organically, which I'm excited about.
Call them in early, and man, at B3, and then it's a grab and go.
Oh, I know.
Pay over the phone, you can grab it and go.
There, I know. And we've done that. And I like it.
Love it.
Me too. We are the Out of Bounds Show. ESPN 105.9 The Zone. Good morning. Welcome in. We hit a little football earlier with text about Walter Nolan. Some Ole Miss fan had a dream that he was coming back. I get it. I mean, Mississippi State fans are dreaming about Chris Jones or Dak Prescott.
Anybody.
Good Lord. Yeah, they're going to get real excited over baseball. I don't know what football is going to look like. It's even hard for me to handicap Ole Miss. Ole Miss will win games just because Lane's got it on the right track. He's been there. He's got a phenomenal staff. They've got things in place. They embraced NIL early. And midway through, they started recruiting better at the high school level. We'll see what those Mississippi defensive recruits look like now that they're in year two that Lane signed a couple years ago. But it's still hard. It's still virtually impossible today. It was already difficult before. Because as somebody who pontificates, y'all love it when we're wrong, but you want us to also speculate and guess, what's going to happen. But now with portal, I mean, Ole Miss is going to be good, but how good, I don't know. Mississippi State, I don't know. I mean, they've got to be better than they were, but I don't know what that means wins-wise. Well, Ole Miss is looking at a floor of 7, which is a good spot to be in.
All right.
With a ceiling of maybe 10, but I'd probably go 9. Mississippi State.
Floor.
2.
Ceiling.
5.
5. Okay. Deal with that.
I don't know if they can get there, but I can tell you what you can't do.
Can't get to it.
Well, yeah, everybody gets fired if that happens. But it was a disappointing debate on Six Pack Speak.
Okay.
I love Steven, and Steven's just generating content. But he posted, what does it take for Levy to stay?
Right.
And the post under it were so low expectations.
Well,
I mean, it was just Unacceptable. People are like, if he goes 3-9, it's okay.
Whoa.
No, it's not. Raise your standard. Have some pride. I mean, I guess these are $50 donors, but the point is, they're going to be more talented, bigger, and athletic. And they signed a bunch of bigger dudes, and they were small. I couldn't believe what Dan Mullen looked at me and said in the box after they were recognized at the A&M game. And he was not being derogatory because he loves Mississippi State, loves Starkville, and so on. But he just looked at me with these eyes wide open. And he said, when the team ran down to Dak and I couldn't believe how small they were. And I just went, wow. Hear it from a coach who's beat a lot of people in P5 and P4 over the years. So I don't know what it means when your schedule is so brutal. Your home games are Tennessee, Texas, Georgia, and Ole Miss. Yeah, it's for the better teams in the country. Which one will be awesome this year? I don't know. Texas has a chance to be really, really good. I think they should be preseason number 1. And, of course, Georgia will be preseason top 5. And who knows? Heupel may, he's done a good job. We'll see what they are at quarterback. They just flipped with UCLA. Nico headed west. UCLA's dude went to Knoxville. See how that looks. Ole Miss's toughest game is on the road at Georgia. What would you say their second toughest game is? LSU at home?
Yeah, probably.
Or Florida at home?
Well.
Or at Oklahoma? So you're going to put Georgia at number 1.
Okay.
At Georgia is their toughest game.
Sure.
You've got a good schedule when you're debating whether their second toughest game is at home.
Yeah.
So they only play 4. They're playing 8 home games like Mississippi State did 2 years ago. It's just Mike Leach wasn't your coach. You were going to trip over 8 wins, not all at home, but you were going to trip over 8 wins with that schedule just because Mike Leach just wins football games. But so does Lane. But if it's at Georgia, is it LSU at home, Florida at home, or at Oklahoma?
Florida at home, right? Florida at home gives
DJ Lagway?
Well, it gives Billy plenty of time to get to the season. Last year, obviously, they didn't start too hot.
They came on.
They came on strong. I don't think that's going to be the same case this year, but I feel like whatever it is, they'll be coming on strong again at the end. I'd rather catch them or LSU at the. I'd rather catch whoever it is at the beginning.
Well, they get Florida November 15th.
It's a tough
one. Who does Florida play before at Kentucky? Okay. Florida plays at Kentucky and then at Ole Miss. All right.
That's nice.
I think this is manageable.
Oh, when you say
is the music going?
When you say manageable.
What now?
When you say manageable.
I meant Florida's looks a little. It's a little more manageable this year than it was last year.
Okay, yeah.
It's still not an Ole Miss schedule or a Tennessee schedule or a Texas, but it's a little more manageable. We are the Out of Bounds Show. We're brought to you by Cover Source Solutions, locally owned, Mississippi grown. For all your HVAC and plumbing, family-owned businesses with offices in Brandon and Ridgeland. If you need AC work or repair, Cover Source Solutions. Call them today. Cover Source Solutions. All right. Good morning. Welcome into the Out of Bounds Show on ESPN 105.9 The Zone. We're excited to have Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann join us live in studio again. He has been in here with us before, and we've had him on over the phone too. Always a ton of fun to talk sports and politics because they definitely mesh, and there's definitely crossover there. They called us, Lieutenant Governor and his staff called us with a little renovation. We have a golf simulator going in. We just got it last week. We're still putting it up, but it's going to be awesome. Good morning, Lieutenant Governor.
Good morning, Bo. It's good to see you again, man.
How you doing?
You've grown up since you started.
I know. Crazy.
We're even talking about children and grandchildren and where everybody is, and you've been growing up and very successful. So congratulations.
You've got kids that are empty nesters, and I appreciate that, by the way.
Right.
And I'm an empty nester, and you've been there. It's totally crazy because you run around with them for years and years to the ballpark and dance recitals.
I know.
And then they're gone.
They're gone, and then all your friends will leave with them because you were on, we were president of the Booster Club. All our friends were friends that had, kids at school. And then they're gone. It's like you have to start all over again. It's but you've got 2 in college, so you're going to have to work for a while.
I am. And I went to school with your kids.
Right.
I grew up with your family many years ago. So, and that was a ton of fun. Spent a lot of time on Sheffield Drive. That's for sure. All right. So,
we've had a massive change in the last 72 hours, Bo.
NIL takes up a lot of our people want to talk about NIL.
Yeah, well, let me give you like the Cook's tour here.
Okay,
and then
great.
We'll come back and then we'll start with questions and everything. But this Arizona swimmer named House decided that he wasn't getting enough money, and so he sued the NCAA. And the NCAA had a California judge that ruled last Friday night, just a few hours ago, that there was a settlement of $2.8 billion. Now, $2.8 billion is a lot of money, whether you're from Warren County, wherever you're from. And so they figured that by 22% of the revenue that ticket sales and TV revenue got. So they came up with that money, $2.8 billion, that the NCAA has to pay, which means we have to pay it through our tickets, actually. So however you are, TV revenue. So there are 19,000 athletes that are going to be paid this money, and some of them could get $15,000, some of them could get $280,000, based upon whether they played, what the revenue was of their particular school and whatnot. But the average of this settlement is $91,000 a year for these young men that played these sports, or young women as well.
Okay.
The lawyers did good on this, Bo, as they always do. They get $484 million as part of their fee.
Wow.
So I assume they'll be able to pay for their own ticket now. So anyway, this money doesn't yet cover the NIL portion. This is about the settlement of the revenue for these kids. If you remember, Mississippi was, I think, one of the second or third case, and I helped draft the legislation for NIL 2 or 3 years ago. So this settlement really covers up to like 2023. When we started NIL to start making these kids be able to do their name, image, and likeness and get paid for it. So that's when this settlement cuts off, because kids, young athletes, started to get money for that. So the NIL part is left out, and I'll come back to that in a second. But we all drafted legislation. In fact, Senator Boyd particularly and I helped with this one. We drafted legislation this year to put Mississippi in the forefront of name, image, and likeness. And it covered revenue sharing and some other things that are now covered by this lawsuit. So we'll have to redo state law. So in order to do this, and this is where it's going to get really unusual. You all have a lot of time to talk about this. They set up something called a College Sports Commission, okay? And it's going to be run by the Big Four, the SEC, the ACC, the Big 12, and all the Big Four, the Atlantic Coast Conference, and,
Big Ten,
the Big Ten, all the Big Four will run it. So the College Sports Commission will make sure that nobody spends more than $20.5 million per year. Now that's indexed for inflation, so it goes up like 4% a year, and I think it can rounds out $30-something million a year for these young athletes. And when that happens, the $20.5 million a year, these kids will be able, these young athletes will be able to receive that money. And I want to get into that in a minute with how that's going to really affect Mississippi. In addition to that, they set up something called NILGO, which covers the NIL payments to individuals. And the reason they did that, they didn't want an overlap. They didn't want big-time donors given to name, image, and likeness to really pay the players, like actually, quite frankly, what we've been doing right now.
Sure.
So to stop that, excuse me, they started this NILGO, and that's supposed to regulate NIL payments. So you've got a new college sports commission you'll be able to talk about, and an NILGO. It's supposed to govern this other part. So what happens, our bill, the state's bill, was Senate Bill 2515, I think, and we will go back and review that this year and decide how this has affected the state law and whether or not it overrules our law, and what our athletes will need to do to comply with that, because we really drafted the law in anticipation of the NIL like we did. This was an amendment to a state law 2 years ago. So now you get down to what does this really mean? So this is where we're into prognostication and not necessarily fact.
Sure.
But the NCAA is now really economically hurt. Excuse me. They no longer control the money, which, as you know, is a big deal. That's where. So they basically will be talking about eligibility or rules. Do you kick off from the 35 or the 40?
Sure.
These different rules that we have in college sports, and betting. They'll say if you bet on the sports, they can kick you out, that kind of thing. So the problems with this will come with a couple of things. One, how do you spend the money? So we got $20.5 million to spend. This starts July 1st, so we're like less than 30 days from this kicking off. So, for example, how would you spend $20 million?
The majority of it in football, and then men's basketball, and then you got to get into the non-revenue sports and figure that out, because football, as you know, drives the train.
Mm-hmm.
So that I can pay for men's golf and women's tennis and track and field, because they don't wonderful sports, but they don't make any money.
And you're dead right about that. There's a question of whether they'll continue or not, and particularly because our Olympic sports, so many of them come out of our college athletes. And you're right. The gymnastics, women's gymnastics, which has been a highlight for the United States for a number of years.
No question.
That's not a revenue maker. No. Swimming, tennis, you get in track and field. All these others are not revenue making. So if you had your 20.5, the first few comments that I saw online were to pay like 15 to 20% of it would actually go to basketball. And then, so you're right, 2.5, maybe $4 million. So then you've got, 15 to 16 million dollars left for football, but you've got to cover your baseball. Like Mississippi State is probably phenomenal. Both Ole Miss and State won national championships.
Sure.
So they got a phenomenal baseball team. So Southern Mississippi's been in it, regional. They
live there.
We're just like really blessed with baseball in Mississippi. So they'll want to continue that. So you put $2 million in that. You put $3 million in that. So all of a sudden, there's very little money left for tennis. And like Ole Miss's golf.
Men's golf
won.
team, unbelievable.
They got won the individual.
And women's.
So their women's, and the women's softball made the final 8. So it's just amazing. Where are we going to allocate these funds? And I think you'll see the athletic directors really scratching their head this morning trying to figure out, okay, where am I going to spend it? The next thing that I think is probably coming is going to be collective bargaining. Mm-hmm. Now, when I've talked with this about the various athletic directors over the last few years, I kept saying, look, these really are employees. When you get down to it, what you're doing is paying these people to be employees. Right. We don't want them to be employees. It would mean they could unionize, and Northwestern and some others have tried to unionize over the years, and so they can unionize everything. Well, we don't want to do that. We don't want to deal with unions. Well, if you look at professional baseball and NFL, that's how they've dealt with this.
Right.
For example, you wouldn't have any free agency here. There wouldn't be guys going around. As Coach Kiffin's already said he don't like the process anyway. But if you get into a union deal, then you would have negotiating where you'd probably have more people staying at one institution, and you'd be paying them to do that. So I think that's probably what's on the horizon here for everyone. In fact, Tennessee, their guy, athletic director is White, Danny White. You may remember him, played quarterback for Dallas. But they're talking about going to collective bargaining as quick as they can. The other part is what happens to the federal law. Does the federal law come in and override all my NIL that I drafted? Senator Boyd and I drafted this last year. Are they going to take over all of that? Is this NILGO going to set the terms? How do we deal with that? And then really the weakness of the NCAA means, does it exist anymore?
I think the big conferences will leave.
Yeah.
Eventually.
I think,
Governor, I think
more likely that that's going to occur now that they've been weakened.
I think the SEC and Big Ten will start the process, and they'll leave at some point. They'll leave the NCAA and create their own entity.
I foresee that, and it may be an entity to negotiate a labor agreement.
Absolutely.
When you get through it, and private equity is sniffing around.
Well,
here.
look what happened this morning. Private equity just got into 2 athletic departments already this morning. It was just announced 30 minutes ago.
I'm not surprised because they'll raise cash and of course want to make obviously they'll want to make money out of it. But you've got to determine this NIL still will be a major draw for these young men and women that are playing these sports. Their NIL contracts will still be a massive part, and there's room for private equity in that. Then you get into, are they going to, if there's a collective bargaining agreement, how are they, who's representing who on all of that. So there's a lot of opportunities and much change coming to sports. I expect Nick Saban somewhere has just come out of Mass. He goes to Mass every day. He's probably come out of Mass and said a thank you prayer.
Yeah.
That he's not
for
there
already.
Because I'm out of that.
That's in the rear view mirror.
Yeah, I know, man. And I'm so glad I won all my championships, and now I'm going to Florida.
That's right.
Whatever.
That's right. Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann on the Out of Bounds Show, 105.9 The Zone ESPN, walking us through what's happening at the state level in the legislature. And then he's laying out some scenarios that could happen both with collective bargaining, NCAA, and as the governor said, at the federal level, you don't know what they're going to rule. So
I was hopeful. Tuberville is going to run for governor in Alabama, and he was taking the lead in this. And I was really hopeful that as he got into his second term up there, that he would be able to, cobble together. Right. There's some conflicting here because the Big East doesn't have any football,
right,
as such. So they got $20 million they can play on basketball.
Rick Pitino at St. John's. They've already come out. They're going to spend 19 or 20 million,
right,
Governor.
So their starting guys are going to make $2 million. Their starting 5 will make $2 million a year to play for St. John's.
Think about that. St. John's and Villanova.
Georgetown. Look at all of them.
Yeah, he's right. You look at the teams like Villanova and Georgetown and St. John's. They're going to allocate all their money. And Rick Pitino has the CEO of Body Armor, who's a billionaire, who said whatever you want to do. So it's going to be interesting.
It's going to be. Well, like I say, it's $2 million for the starting 5. That's 10, and so they still got $10 million to spend on the backups.
That's right.
So we're in the SEC. We've been, obviously tremendously competitive, particularly these last few years in basketball. But we're going to be struggling to do that with somebody that can make, when they allocate $4 million to basketball at Mississippi State. Well, these other guys are allocating $20 million.
Right.
So who do you want to play for?
Right.
Rick Pitino at St. John's at $2 million a year, or $250,000 back where we are. So there'll be, I think there'll be some leveling there. It's going to be hard for them to come back. And
you're going to have coaches in the athletic departments, Governor, that are going to be fighting for their share. I mean, I was listening to Kentucky Sports Talk Radio this morning, and they came out and said that this is unheard of in the SEC, as you know. It looks like they're going to skew more towards basketball when majority of the teams in our conference are going to put more into football. But Kentucky's different. Yeah. Well, you look at Mississippi State, and of course they got just this tremendous facility, and they just hired a coach that's winning everywhere. He was, by the way, he was at Notre Dame at one point. Notre Dame alum.
all
Hey, he and
my guys
Denari,
are doing good.
They did a great job at Notre Dame over
They did.
a 10-year
Look,
stretch.
they couldn't even practice till March or April.
I know. It was
They had
snow
to-
on the ground.
I know. They had to come down here to play all their spring games because it was too cold where they were. So they did good, and Mississippi State's obviously competing and will compete strongly, and that is as Southern and Ole Miss. So those coaches meetings are going to be antagonistic. I need $1 million more for my guy, and we can win the national championship. And no, I need a quarterback, and
That's right.
It's going to be pretty interesting for Carter and all the rest.
Well,
of
Keith Carter and Zach Selman is going to be a tremendous challenge. And like you said, is it going to hold? With the judges ruling out of which you were referencing,
Right.
the judges ruling out of the San Francisco Bay Area. She's been kind of in this for a long time. You mentioned the swimmer and the O'Bannon basketball player
right.
from the 90s,
Right.
UCLA. But if and you know more about it than I do after an awesome, prestigious legal career, what happens if the Senate and Congress up in the federal level does something, and then what happens if and when the SEC and Big Ten pull out of the NCAA?
Yeah, what's most likely, first of all, this is not going to be appealed. So the NCAA has beat this down to where they think they can settle for $2.8 billion. So they've either got the money or made it from March Madness or whatever. So they're going to allocate this fund. So we're not appealing this decision. It's going to stick. In Congress, they have been lethargic about doing anything about this because, just like I said, the Big East and all of those schools up there are not going to be, they're going to be for the SEC having to water down their basketball. That doesn't bother them at all.
No.
So I don't know that they'll get involved in this. The only way they would be to give an antitrust exemption. And then the big question is what happens to Title IX? So if you give $3 million to boys basketball, you need to give $3 million to women's basketball. And without an exemption, then you're going to find yourself back in court under Title IX.
I think they'll get an exemption. I think they'll leave the NCAA and get an exemption.
If they get the exemption, then things will break even faster.
Okay.
Then, because the exemption will allow them to allocate better. Right now, I don't know how they handle that.
No. All right. So $20.5 million is the budget, and we're going to see how schools, whether it's Ole Miss and Keith Carter, Zach Selman
Right.
and Mississippi State, among others,
Right.
or Notre Dame, Governor's alma mater, how they decide to do this. Of course, and then you got private schools, as you know, Duke, Notre Dame, Stanford, among others, that can, they can run their numbers.
Well, SMU, for example, didn't even take any money to get in the ACC. They forfeited all their revenue. They got so much money in Dallas, they really didn't care about the
They
revenue.
raised like several $100 million like
Right,
that.
yeah. I think it was 200.
What a prestigious. Your daughter went to SMU.
She did. But we didn't get any of that.
Great school, but they're serious about. They had a great year. They went to the college football playoff.
They were a very good team, and you can anticipate they're going to spend a whole bunch of money now.
Heck yeah, they are.
It's a fantastic school there academically and whatnot. But all of that being said, this is not the final chapter, Bo. No, this is the next step forward. I think if I had to guess, I think you're right. We'll end up with the Big Four having their own league of some sort, and I think we'll end up with a collective bargaining. And if we don't get an exemption from Title IX, then all these, I'm not going to say they're minor sports because track and field, I've always been interested in that, and others, those will all fade away at the collegiate level just by lack of funding.
They'll have to go to club level type sports.
Right, which is really sad because part of collegiate athletics is the fact that your next door neighbor is a pole vaulter. Well, at Ole Miss, they won a gold medal.
Yeah.
So, you've got these guys, your next door neighbor won the golf championship.
Sure.
That's a big thing.
Heck yeah.
I mean, he's not, someone special. He's just somebody that's in part of your community. And you talk about him and you see him in later life. And it's part of the culture of going to an academic institution.
It's important.
Is the relationships between all these people that are good basketball players. They end up having to get a job like everybody else does. And so you end up having those kinds of relationships. And when you just limit it down to maybe 3 sports, it just doesn't seem to be the same university, the way you'd look at a university concept from a cultural standpoint.
Right. Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann on the Out of Bounds Show, ESPN 105.9 The Zone, laid out where we are, but as the governor said, there's still more. I mean, this is nuanced, and it's like they're in a field with a bunch of mines, and we don't know exactly where it's going.
Yeah.
And but I do think the SEC and the Big Ten will break away. That both conference presidents gave their conference commissioners the authority to leave the NCAA within the last few months. Now, if and when they'll do it, we'll see, Governor Hosemann. But very quietly in March, our SEC presidents met, and they voted to give Commissioner Sankey the autonomy and the power to leave the NCAA if they feel that is what is best for the conference. And the Big Ten did it about 30 or 60 days before. So that was kind of...
They're what they call in the law business laying the predicate.
Yes, that's right.
Which is they're getting set to do that. But I think they will probably hang together until such time as they can get the antitrust stuff from Washington, if they can ever get it.
I agree. Thank you so much for coming in. I know y'all had a very active and interesting session.
We did, and I'm glad it's over. So
I know, and then everybody got back together again.
It's time to go. We've done all of that, and so now we're ready to get to it. We've got some special elections coming this year for some of our senators, which a decision made by a person other than me. I thought our stuff was right. I thought the federal courts were unconstitutional in what they did to Mississippi, but sometimes that's a longer story.
Right. Well, thank you. I'm glad your family's doing well.
Everybody's doing great.
Thanks for your service to the state of Mississippi. Second term?
Yeah, we're doing pretty good right now. We're on a roll. We're paying off debt and funding teachers, and that's always good.
I love hearing it. And I hope you have a great summer with your family.
Thank you very much. You too.
Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann on the Out of Bounds Show, 105.9 The Zone ESPN. I think we're going to have to get another update like mid-fall from Governor Hosemann because this thing is never-ending, ongoing. There'll be other decisions that are made. He's right on the collective bargaining. And then we've got private equity coming into play. They just grabbed a chunk of 2 athletic departments this morning. We'll see how many more. I think it's a group called Elevate. That's a huge private equity firm. And there's also talk that Mississippi State and Ole Miss are at least exploring what that looks like if someone comes in and pumps in $400 or $500 million. But here's the deal. They get to take, as the governor knows, they get to take 30 or 40% or whatever that is. So you got to be careful. Have a great summer. Tell your family and kids I said hello. I know you're having fun with the grandkids. And Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann on the Out of Bounds Show. It will be on Spotify and Apple Podcast, uploaded in the next hour if you missed anything on our NIL discussion. And our state has been on the forefront of doing things that will help Mississippi State and Ole Miss and Southern Miss as this thing continues to evolve. Have a great Monday. Be careful out there with the weather. We'll be right back here tomorrow at 7 a.m. on ESPN 105.9 The Zone.